Hello everybody. In this video we're going to look at an example of a matching game and see how we can set up a sequence to make a master sketch. But before we go into the situation and the rules, let's talk about what makes something a matching game on the LSAT. So I'm just going to sketch that over here just because I'm annoying that way. Matching on the LSAT. Okay, here's the idea. Unlike a sequence game, where we have a whole list of objects that we need to put in a particular order, a matching game really does not care about order. Order does not matter. Like one thing has to come first and then something else. It's more of we have to put sets of things in certain groups. And the way that we can tell this is, we can look at this here. There are exactly 3 recycling centers, 1, 2, and 3. Alright, so we have these 3 groups, and then we have 5 kinds of material are recycled. So we just pause there just for a second. You think about this. If I've got 3 things and 5 kinds of material, well, 3 and 5 are not the same, right? At least one of these centers is going to have more than one type of thing, which indicates this is not going to be a sequence. We're not dealing with a situation where one thing goes exactly here, something else goes somewhere else, etc. Okay? That is going to indicate that we are dealing with how do we select and put these things into the particular group. Okay, so let's continue on and look at the rules here. Exactly 5 kinds of things. We have glass, G, N, P, T, and W. Each recycling center recycles at least 2, but no more than 3. Well, we can kind of put this as a little bit of a restriction on our sequence. Because initially what we have is we've got 3 centers, and here's how I would sketch them. I would do something like this. I've got center number 1, center number 2, and center number 3. Oh, that's going to make things worse. Let's not going to do that. Okay, so I got center 1, center 2, and center 3. And then those are the places where I can put, according to this game, where I can put these different entities, right? The glass and so on. And I like to, of course, abbreviate the things that we're dealing with in terms of their first letter, right? G, what do we got? G, N, P, T, and W. Alright, so those are 5, and we have to place them somehow here. We have to select how do we match up where things go. But we have a restriction. It says each recycling center recycles at least 2, but no more than 3 of each of these kinds of material. Now, let's think about how this is going to play out here. What that's going to indicate is we have to put 2 things, at least, minimum 2 of these in each of these slots. So what I would do is, just me personally, I would put space 1, space 2, space 1, space 2, space 1, space 2. We have to fill in these slots. And again, very importantly, we know this is not a sequence game because they did not say that, you know, if I put G in here, I can't put it anywhere else. Presumably, we could put, you know, G here, G there, G here, G, you know, everything could have G. It doesn't say that, you know, using one of those pieces means you can't use it anywhere else, right? But how do we deal with the idea that we have no more than 3? So it's possible that you could have 3 different things in each category, but it's not required. It's required that we have 2, but not necessarily 3. So, I mean, you know, kind of do whatever you want to do here. I tend to, in me personally, I like to do something like this. I do like a little squiggly line, something like that, where it's indicating I don't have to put something here, but it's available if I need it. You do you. Whatever makes sense to you, but you just want to flag the fact that we've got an additional slot, but it's optional. All right? So this is my kind of initial setup here. 3 centers, max 3, but minimum 2 slots. Here's our entities. Let's look at our rules. The first rule is any recycling center that has wood also, oops, sorry, where did my pen go? Oh, there it is. Also recycles newsprint. Now, the way that I set these things up is I set them up vertically. So I'm going to just kind of put the rules also vertically, just to make sense here. So I'm going to say something like this. Well, if I've got wood, I also have to have newsprint. Well, that's kind of like what we've been talking about. That's a block, right? If I've got wood, block, wood, no pun intended, yay! Sorry. Okay, but if I have wood, I also have to have newsprint. So that means I've got a block like this. If I've got W, N has to come along with it. All right, that would be rule number 1. Check that one off. Rule number 2. Whatever, this is a little tricky. Everything that's in center 2 is also in center 1. Now, the way I would write this is something like this. I would do 2, arrow 1. Here's where we have to be very careful. All right, I'm going to just kind of nerd out on this just for a moment, and then we'll move on to the last rule. You do not want to do this. You do not want to say that 2 is equal to 1. And think about why that's the case. It says that whatever's in 2 is also in 1, but the reverse is not necessarily true. Let me give you an example. I'm just going to put this in let's put it in pink, my favorite here. Supposing 2 had, let's say I had, I don't know, glass and tea. Well, what was tea again? Tin. Glass and tin in there. Well, according to this rule, whatever's in 2 has to also be in 1, right? I have to put glass in there and tin in there as well. But I could also have something else in 1, right? I could also maybe, because remember there's 3 possible slots here, maybe I have, I don't know, newsprint in there. I don't necessarily have to, so in other words, 1 and 2 are not the same, because 1 has an additional thing in it that 2 does not have, but the rule just basically states, as long as whatever's in 2 is in 1, we're good. So that's why I would write it like this. Whatever's in 2 has to be in 1. Don't say 2 and 1 are the same, because 1 can have things that 2 doesn't, just as long as 1 has whatever it is that 2 has. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, let me clear this out. There we go. Okay, so that's rule 2. Whatever's in 2 has to be in 1. Let's go back to purple. Then okay, so we did that one. And then the third rule, okay, this is interesting. The third rule says only one of the recycling centers has plastic, and that recycling center does not recycle glass. So let's think about this. I can put this in a couple of ways. I can say only one. Well, actually, I shouldn't put the 1 there because that's going to confuse me myself. I think that it applies here. So I'm going to say only 1 has P. Only 1 P, or maybe, yeah, I'll just do something like this. Only 1 P. How about that? Only 1 P, and we know that if we have P, we have a block. We have P means not G. If I've got P in there, we do not have G. But here's where we can make one further analysis here. Because think about it like this. If only one of the recycling centers is allowed to have a P in it, but notice rule 2. Rule 2 says whatever's in 2 has to be in 1. I can deduce that 2 cannot have P. Because if it did, if it's got P, if we can put recycle plastic in center 2, we have to also, according to rule 2, recycle plastic in center 1. But then that would violate rule number 3. So that means we know for sure that we are not allowed to put plastic into recycling center 2. And that's really it. That's as much as we can deduce from our rules here. We know that if we have wood, therefore we also have to have N, newsprint. We know that whatever's in 2 also has to appear in 1. We know that there's only one place, we do have to have, there's only one recycling center that can have P. If we have P, no G allowed, no glass. And combining rules 2 and 3, we know that we cannot have plastic in recycling center 2. So the only places where plastic could go would be in 3 or in 1. But only one of them, right? We can't have it in both. And that's it. That's as far as we can go. So now, before I end the video here, I want you to take a look at the questions 18 through 23. Pause the video, take a screenshot, see if you can solve these given our master sketch. See if you can figure these out. In the next video, I will tackle each one of these, probably break it up into a couple of videos, and see how we can, using the sketch, get at the answer to these questions. But using that sketch, see what you can do, see what you come up with, and we'll have a confab a little bit later. Hopefully this was helpful.